Today, we're going to talk about that famous topic, which is tipping. Now, I don't want to go off on a tangent, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but tipping for me is discretionary. It's up to me. I've paid for my meal, and now I'm going to tip you based on the service you provided me. I'm not going to tip you because I carried out my own pizza, and or I carried out my husband's pizza, whatever. But I don't think that's what tipping is, and it's getting to be a little out of control, where people feel like they can just demand for you to tip them, and I think that's where they're going wrong. Now, don't get me wrong, we were shut down for a long period of time, and I think when people were allowed to go back into restaurants, they were just so excited that they were allowed to get out of their house that perhaps, you know, they wanted to make it up to people who were out of work for a while and didn't get the opportunity. Now, I believe that every employer should pay their employee a competitive wage. And and as an employee, you shouldn't have to depend on a tip to decide if you're going to get good service or not. A tip, like I said, is discretionary, and absolutely we should tip people. Um, Back in the day, or bartenders used to get tipped because they would make certain bartending wages. But I really think in order to get rid of this tip issue, an employer should really be paying the wages and eliminate this whole tipping issue. Now, there are a couple of other things I want to talk about when we come to tips. It's it's when I give a tip to the person who served my meal, who was, cordial and did a great job for me, I didn't tip them because I thought they needed to tip out the person that cooked the meal. Now, I don't mean that the person that cooked the meal doesn't deserve, but they deserve a wage. Everyone deserves a wage. And I think this issue is very simple. If the employer paid them the correct wage, and perhaps your meal would cost a little more, who cares? But if the employer paid people proper wages, then this whole tipping society would be under control now, wouldn't it? Um, so why is tipping not an issue in Japan? Good service is what they expect the employees to provide. They don't tip people. They give you good service anyways. And so I think that's where um, the tipping becomes a whole different ballgame. But what's more important is when people add the tip onto your bill. So in some places, they add the tip onto your bill and they don't tell you that they've already added a tip. And then they leave a portion open for an additional tip. And that to me is even more underhanded than downright coming and asking for a tip. So this issue, I actually a few weeks before Christmas, I wanted to do it, and I thought, oh geez, I don't want to sound like a Grinch at Christmas, but it's kind of really annoying. Like I shouldn't have to go into like a basic store and have to cancel out the tip portion with my order, like or feel the pressure to pay a tip even though the person gave me no service. What are your thoughts on this? I'd love to hear from you. I know this is a sore topic with a lot of people, and some people are thinking it and don't want to say it because they feel like, oh, if I talk about a tip, I'm going to get blacklisted. But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is a tip is discretionary and it shouldn't be a mandatory function. And if it's mandatory, then the employer should pay the wage, whatever the competitive wage is. And I think as an employer, in order to really kind of uh, keep, retain that service, you should just be paying a competitive wage, something that the industry's paying or above the industry, so that you get to be the employer of choice. You get to pick. Like if everybody else is paying minimum wage or 20 bucks an hour, perhaps if you paid a little more, you would get to pick, or people would want to work for you. Of course, money is not everything. You also have to have good working conditions. Um, but really, this tip thing is getting out of control, and I wish someone would just put an end to it once and for all. And tipping out is even a bigger problem. So the person gets money, and so actually, let me talk about this piece. We were out for dinner one night, and so I asked the lady, "Hey, what happens if you leave now?" Because she asked us if we needed anything else because they were not really busy, so they were sending her home. And I thought it was kind of a little ridiculous because she had just gotten there, she had just started her shift, and I thought it was kind of bizarre that they were sending her home, right? Anyhow, so I asked her what happened to her tip, and she was very sweet. She's like, "Oh, don't worry, this other lady's going to look after you. She's really nice. She'll do a great job." And then we started asking her more questions. And we started asking her about, does she get to keep all of her tips, and does she have to tip out? And she was reluctant, but she did share that she had to tip out, and she had to tip out. So I said, "So what happens if you don't make a tip?" And she still had to tip out. And um, so at the end of the day, like, is she even getting paid to come to work? Or maybe she's paying someone else. Look, I think this tip issue needs to be settled once and for all. I think employers need to pay their employees so that the person, the consumer, doesn't look, everything an employer pays out or a business pays out, they find a way to take it back from the consumer. Okay, they're not going to put it out of their own pocket. Okay, fine, we pay it. But when you as when you're kind of forced to pay a tip on items that typically you wouldn't be tipping on, that's a whole different issue and a whole different ballgame. And I really think wages should be competitive enough that we don't have to tip, and that we can be more like places like Japan and those set of countries where good service is part of what they offer their clients, and not good service just because I'm expecting you to tip me. What are your thoughts on this? Share with me in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you.